Hi there, I'm going to solve this quadratic equation by completing the square. In order to complete the square, it's necessary for us to look at the first two terms of the trinomial written in descending order. So I'm looking at the quadratic term and the linear term. The quadratic term has a leading coefficient of 1, which is what I need, and the linear term has another coefficient. It doesn't really matter what this coefficient of the linear term is. It's very important that I have a leading coefficient of 1 in order to solve a quadratic by completing the square. So my first step is to isolate the quadratic term and the linear term on one side of the equation. So I'm going to subtract the constant, which is 32, to both sides of the equation, giving me x squared plus 18x. I think I wrote 18x squared there. Fix that. X squared plus 18x. Now I no longer have plus 32. I have equals negative 32. And that's going to leave a nice empty space here for me to complete the square. To complete the square, I look at the linear term. The coefficient is 18. I'm going to cut that number in half. Half of 18 is 9. Then I'm going to take 9 and I'm going to square it. 9 times 9 is 81. If I add 81 to this left-hand side of the equation, I need to add 81 to the right-hand side of the equation. The left-hand side of the equation, let's get some highlights going on here. This left-hand side of the equation, we're going to make it look just a little bit different. Now that I have that 81 there, I can write this trinomial in factored form, which is x plus 9 times x plus 9. And over here, I have 81 minus 32, which is 49. Now, this left-hand side of the equation can be condensed to be x plus 9 quantity squared equals 49. Now that I have a square on the left-hand side of the equation, I can square root both sides. Now when I square root both sides, I have to remember that I have a plus or a minus that goes along with that square root of the constant. So I have plus or minus 7 on the right-hand side of the equation. On the left-hand side of the equation, the square root of x plus 9 squared is simply x plus 9. Now I have two equations. I have x plus 9 equals positive 7. And I have x plus 9 equals negative 7. From here, I can solve for x. I subtract 9 from both sides, and I get x equals negative 2. I subtract 9 from both sides, and I get x equals negative 16. So my two answers are negative 16 and negative 2. Okay, let's try another problem where we have a leading coefficient for a quadratic term. Notice how we have this 4x squared. Well, I'm first going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to look to get the first two terms all by themselves. So I'll have 4x squared minus 16x. But now I'm going to add 33 to both sides to get rid of that constant. And I have room right here to complete the square. However, remember that I said we have to have a leading coefficient of 1. So I'm going to factor out this 4 from these first two terms, leaving me x squared minus 4x. And I'll end my parentheses just before that equal sign. Now that I have a leading coefficient of 1 in my quadratic, I can take half of 4. Half of 4 is 2. 2 squared is 4. What I did was I have 4x squared, which is right here, minus 16x, which is right here, and I added 16 to the left-hand side of the equation. Therefore, I need to add 16 to the right-hand side of the equation. That's going to give me 4 times x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals 49. From here, I can divide both sides by 4. I will have a nice trinomial that is factorable, so try not to get lost with that fraction there, because I know that sometimes we get a little intimidated by fractions. We're going to look at this trinomial and we're going to factor it. It is x minus 2 times x minus 2. I'm going to condense that so that it is x minus 2 quantity squared. From here I can square root both sides, and remember, when you square root both sides you have that plus or minus. So I have x minus 2 equals plus or minus 7 over 2. The square root of 49 is 7. The square root of 4 is 2. And again, these fractions can be a little intimidated. So if we take 7 over 2, that's the same thing as 3.5. So I have two equations. X minus 2 equals positive 3.5. I also have x minus 2 equals negative 3.5. So x equals 5.5. X equals negative 3.5 plus 2 is negative 1.5. And there are my two answers. Now, I went through this pretty quickly, so feel free to stop, rewind, take notes, pause, rewind, rewatch, and I'll see you in the next video.